I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're exploring the captivating memoir called The Extraordinary Life of an Ordinary Man. It's written by an amazing author by the name of Dan Huddleston. It is his story. This book chronicles his adventures across 6 continents and over 90 countries, sparked by pivotal events such as the Vietnam War and the 1981 air traffic controllers strike. Join us as we dive into his incredible journey filled with wanderlust, historical events, and the love of a lifetime. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Dan, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
It's great to be here, Logan. Thank you.
So when did the extraordinary life begin? When did the adventures begin? Did it begin when you went into the Vietnam War?
I think that's fair to say. When I finished my initial training in the Air Force, uh, I I wanted to try something new. So I told the Air Force that I wanted to leave the country. I wanted to go somewhere. So they sent me to Japan.
Mhm.
It was supposed to be a 24-month assignment, but halfway through it, they closed the base I was at.
Mhm.
And since we were just down the road and around the corner, they sent me a little further down the road to sunny South Vietnam.
Wow. Big difference from Japan to go to South Vietnam in that era, for sure.
It it certainly was, and what Japan provided for me was an introduction to what would end up becoming my lifelong career.
Mhm.
Vietnam then took that to the next step, and it really taught me how to perform the duties that I was assigned.
Exactly, exactly. So what would be your career? You said that Japan laid the groundwork for it. Tell us what your career would be.
I was an air traffic controller.
Yeah. So obviously 1981 was a pivotal year as well when Reagan said, you guys are gone because of the strike, right?
That is correct. After 4 years in the Air Force, 2 months after getting out of the Air Force, I started to work at the Chicago Air Traffic Control Center.
Mhm.
And then 1980 was a big year. We knew that something big was going to happen. And uh, there had been a sick out in the late 60s where the leaders of the union were fired. This time they were talking about a full fledged strike.
Yeah.
And we had contact with the Reagan administration where he told us that if we supported his campaign, that he would support us in our contract negotiations. It turned out to not be that way.
Right.
The negotiations made no headway at all. Sometimes it felt like the FAA wanted us to go.
Yeah.
So in August of 1981, we walked out on strike. 48 hours later, Reagan went on national television and said if we did not return to work, we would be fired. And 36 hours after that, they locked the gates and we were all terminated.
Amazing. Was that the end of your career as an air traffic controller?
Uh, it looked like it at the time.
Yeah.
Uh, I went back to school, I got a degree, I worked in a variety of dead end jobs. And then in the late 80s, I had the opportunity to get back in my career by leaving the country.
Hmm.
So, June of 1987, I left the United States and I went to Abu Dhabi for 2 years.
Hmm.
It gave me the opportunity to get back to what I knew. It reminded me of how much I loved what I did.
Mhm.
At the end of that 2 years, I was planning on getting married to this incredible young lady that I had been seeing before I left. And it turned out to be just a rather interesting set of affairs.
Yeah.
One day we were sitting around the radar room talking, and somebody said they heard that the Swiss were hiring.
Hmm.
So I was walking along downtown and I walked past the Swiss embassy and I went in and asked for the name of somebody in the Swiss air traffic control. And I sat down and I wrote them a letter and I said, I hear you guys need air traffic controllers. I'm an air traffic controller. How about we get together?
Hmm.
And so I waited a little over a month and a half. And I got a letter back from them, and they asked me to call and speak with a gentleman on the phone. We spoke for about a half an hour, and he invited me to Switzerland for a meeting. And I called that delightful young lady and I said, "So how would you like to go to Switzerland?" And we had visited Switzerland the summer before. And she said, "Well, I love Switzerland when I was there."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I don't mean to visit, I mean to live." And her response was, well, okay.
That's a good response.
She flew from Chicago. I flew from Abu Dhabi. We met at baggage claim at Zurich Airport. I met with the people at Swiss Control. They offered me the job. So when summer came along, we got married on July 1st. We left the United States on July 4th. And we didn't return to the United States to live for the next 7 years.
Wow.
We spent 2 years in Switzerland. We went back to Abu Dhabi for a little over 4 years. Then we went to Hong Kong for almost a year. And then I was finally reinstated at Chicago Center and returned back to where I started and finished out my career there.
Amazing. It's an amazing journey. And it's also interesting how what seems like a horrible thing in your life, getting fired in 1981 by the President of the United States, turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to you, right?
Well, I have a very good friend who tells me frequently that the best thing that ever happened to me was being fired by Ronald Reagan.
Exactly, because you never would have left. You never would have gone to Switzerland. You never would have gone to Abu Dhabi. Probably, it's hard to leave steady work,
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah. So that's wonderful. So your wanderlust was in part places you would move and live. And then also part of it was your travels as well in between,
Certainly,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
Well, one of the nice things about international contracts is that they give you a lot of leave time.
Right.
The company I worked for in Abu Dhabi, they gave 56 days a year.
Wow.
And so the way we would divide it up, I would take half of it and return to the States. I'd take the other half and split it in 2 blocks of 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And we'd pick up a map and look for some place we hadn't been before, and off we would go.
Amazing. That's 11 weeks, 56 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. That's wonderful. Where was your favorite place to travel or visit or live, or each one of those? I'm sure you had a favorite place to travel, a favorite place to live. Tell us about that.
It's a multi-part answer. As far as a place to work goes, the Hong Kong Civil Aviation Authority is the best employer I ever had. Yeah. They cared deeply about their people, and they've been over backwards to show you that they cared. From a social aspect, Abu Dhabi was a great place to live because we had a big extended family of about 50 people, and we were doing something with them all the time.
Yeah.
You can't argue with the beauty of Switzerland.
No.
It is an incredibly beautiful place.
Yeah.
But I suppose if I was going to pick out one place that I thought was the best, it's a place that's called the Grand Hyatt Nusa Dua on the island of Bali in Indonesia.
That sounds great.
It is an incredible hotel. It's got about 750 rooms, but it's spread out in a way that you almost feel like you're alone.
Amazing.
And my young lady and I went there twice, and we had the most glorious times both times we were there.
Amazing. That's amazing. It's an amazing story. And that's a great insider tip from some guy who has been to 6 continents, 90 countries, and knows the air travel very, very well. We will take note of that hotel in Bali for sure. What about your partner? Did you get married? Did you stay just boyfriend and girlfriend? Did her job accommodate her to be able to travel with you? Tell us a little bit about that, about the love of your life.
Yeah. Well, the first 2 years that I was in Abu Dhabi, she was finishing her first postgraduate degree. And she went through a program that taught her to be a medical technologist, a lab tech. And then she went to work at Loyola University Medical Center in Maywood, Illinois, and she worked there for a year. Then we got married July 1st of 1989. Then we began our travels together. In the end, we had 29 incredible years together.
Right.
And all the time that we were gone, she worked in all of the different places where we were at. She worked in different parts of the lab, and so she got a lot of different experience. Then when we returned to the United States, she decided that she wanted to try to do something more. And when we were in Abu Dhabi, we had a friend there who offered to sponsor her to go to medical school at Oxford.
Wow.
But it meant she would have had to be away for 3 years, and she didn't want to do that. So when we returned to the United States, she went back to school. She redid her math and science classes. And then she went to a 27-month program and got a master's degree in medical studies and became a physician's assistant. And she practiced at that for 17 years.
Wow. Amazing.
And then in 2018, January of 18, we knew that something was going on. She was having medical issues. But being who she was, she didn't want to take time away from work. So she just kept pushing through. And then finally in May, it started to rear its head. Late May, she was diagnosed with a very rare type of female cancer. And they said that it was found in between 1% and 3% of all female cancers worldwide.
Wow.
7 weeks later, she was dead.
Sorry about that. So sorry. Yeah.
You know,
you had 29 wonderful years together, more adventures in those 30 years or 3 decades than most people have over 50 years or 60
it's just
years.
incredible. And on our anniversary that year, July 1st, we sat together and we talked about how that 29 years went by in what seemed like 5 minutes.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I would have given anything for another 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. There's a wonderful book. I think it's called For Another Day or For One More Day, something like that.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's the same thing. The guy could have one more day with his mother. And I know you feel the same way if you get one more day with her.
Certainly.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Well, it's a beautiful book. It's a beautiful tribute to her. It's a beautiful life you guys built together. And I think you were very smart to share it because I think it's of interest to the world. I really do. Because it's a great lesson in life. Just because life throws you a curveball doesn't mean you have to strike out. You know what I mean?
Well, life, occasionally through life, you encounter some great American heroes. And I encountered such a man when I was in high school. He taught me some very valuable lessons. And a couple of them were, one, he said that the worst that can happen to you is you fail. But you can't fail if you don't try.
Yeah. Exactly.
And the second lesson was you can do anything if you want to badly enough.
Agreed. 100%.
So I've held those lessons close to my heart for my whole life.
Smart man, because it's made for a very, very interesting life. The name of the book, Dan's memoir, is called The Extraordinary Life of an Ordinary Man. And the book chronicles his adventures across 6 continents and over 90 countries. And it was sparked by pivotal events such as the Vietnam War and the 1981 air traffic controller strike. Dan, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Logan. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure chatting with you, learning about your life. It's been fascinating. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.